All right, brother. Thanks for having me here. This is fucking sick. Sweet place. You're killing it right now. Huge on social media. You have multiple businesses, multiple streams of income, thriving. But it wasn't always that way, right? We were talking about this right before the camera started rolling. Like your story, your past. For anyone who doesn't know you or isn't familiar with your story, can you take us back to what you were just saying? 18 years old, homeless.
Yeah. So I've had a strange life, and at no point in my life did I ever think that social media would be like the main thing that I'm doing. I grew up in Western New York, and then my father passed away at a very young age, and my family moved to Tennessee to kind of rebuild and get our feet together. We were always super poor. My dad did like rural construction, so we amazingly, like the first place I lived in New York was like 30 miles away from our nearest neighbor. So like we had no socialization, completely cut off, like super far out from the world in a town that had, I think, like 500 people. We moved to Buffalo, and then, like I said, after my father passed, we moved to Tennessee to get closer to my grandparents and kind of get our footing. And my family got really involved in like an extremely intense religious community that sort of turned out to be a cult. I was raised in that for about 12 years. And eventually I reached a point where I started asking questions, and I preached a sermon on Sunday morning to my congregation about why I thought my church was wrong, which they didn't really expect. The kind of end result of all of that was that I was excommunicated and kicked out because I wasn't willing to they basically were like, recant your sermon or you're done. So I wasn't willing to do that. I was like, y'all ever heard of Galileo? Which they didn't like. I was kicked out. My family kind of followed suit, and I became homeless by the time I was 18, and I still had a year of high school left, which sucked. So had to figure it all out. But I had this, I think, a very rare experience, as we were talking about before, that because I lost my family and I lost the religious community I was a part of, which was like my only community. Like I was homeschooled. I didn't have like almost any friends outside of that community. I had a point where I was like, wow, my entire life is at zero. And that's like a terrifying experience, of course, because you're like, what do I do with all this? But it's also empowering because you're like, wow, I'm free now. I can start over from scratch. I can build this life into whatever I want it to be. So with that realization in mind, I had been doing academic speech and debate for a while. I was kind of plugged into that. That's how I got involved in like preaching a sermon anyways, because my second year that I was in speech and debate, I won the national championship. That's what prompted my church to be like, all right, now you're a man of God, now you need to preach a sermon, right? Moved on from that. In the first year of me being homeless, I won nationals again in a different league, which impressed.
The first year of you being, how long were you homeless for?
It was like off and on for about 4 years. And when I say homeless, I'm always careful to be like, there's an image of like, you're like sleeping under a bridge every night. And like, I definitely had some rough nights. I had some nights in my car and everything else, but a lot of it too was couch surfing. It wasn't, homeless is a flexible term, of course, for many people, where it's sometimes it can refer to, you think of the army veteran who's like under the bridge with the sign, but you have an equal number of people, youth, that are, you think about like a lot of people in like the LGBTQ community that are made homeless because of family separation, and it just looks different for them, right? So my situation was like, I didn't have a home, like I didn't have a place to be, and so I couch surfed, I lived in my car and did what I could. But shortly after winning nationals the second time, in the second year, I started teaching it, and I started doing really well with that. As like my second year as a coach, my student won nationals, and so people started looking at me as like, who's this new guy, like coming in and coaching speech and debate. I had the realization as a business person, I was like, look, I'm making what, like 15, 20 an hour coaching, which at the time is like a lot of money for me. I'm like, that's crazy. That's like, that's more than minimum wage. Like, look at me go. And I had this realization where I was like, the people that I'm coaching, these like really talented students that I'm making great, they could compete against me, right? Because they have the best theory, they have the best strategy. It came from me. They just won. Everyone's looking at them like, all right, now you teach, because you have the trophy, right? People may forget that I had the trophy 3 years ago. So my realization was, I need to make sure that the people that I train and coach that win work for me. So I hired them into the company. It's called A-Speak. That was the name of it. I hired them in and then took a commission off their pay, which gave them a great job, and also just magnified our brand, because rather than splitting off and competing, we were like, hey, you want to be where all the winners are? Like, come here, right? And so that was our brand. We trained like 30 national champions in about 4 years. I mean, we would walk into nationals in like 2018, we like swept. We like took like almost every single title. Like all of our students bodied it. So with that success, that happened shortly after I moved to Texas. I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself a bit. I moved from Tennessee to Texas to get out of the life and the community that I'd been in. Just because even though I was out of the cult and everything else, it's still just the reminders of the landmarks of where I was before were just so uncomfortable. I was like, I need a clean restart on everything.
For sure.
So
it's important.
Exactly. Yeah. So I moved to Texas, went to SMU in Dallas, and that's where my life started to really pull together. That's when coaching really took off. My students started winning. Ace Peak grew. And after college ended, I had a successful business. I'd hired 4 different coaches. Single-handedly, we had swept nationals a bunch.
How old are you at this point?
Let's see. I was like 22, like
okay.
23.
So you're still very young.
Yeah.
Doing well already. Also, I just want to pause real quick right here, because I think communication is the most important skill in business.
Yeah.
And I think everything else can follow if you're able to communicate well. Yeah. And that's the thing that most people lack. Yes. First of all, right? You might be very smart. You might be very intelligent. You might be the hardest worker. If you can't communicate properly, you're not meant to be a leader, 100%. Right? Or you're not going to succeed at being a leader. So I'm curious, has that skill, I assume the answer is yes, translated over into the success in all the other areas of your life?
Yeah.
Like how has making content been helped by that?
I mean, I think communication is the most important skill to learn at a young age. Like I think academic speech and debate, be it a nerdy niche activity as it is, and that's the image of it, the actual process of learning public speaking and learning critical thinking through debate and comparing ideas creates this communication skill that outflows into every area of your life, business, relationships especially. It's incredibly important. And so when I started making content, which, just to sort of catch you up, from SMU, I graduated and was like, well, I want to do something else besides run this company. I picked law school and then applied and got a full ride to USC as their #1 applicant. I was the 2020 Rothman Scholar, so I got their single biggest scholarship, which was a big accomplishment.
Was that all because of grades, or was that also because of how do you get a scholarship like that to a great school like USC?
Yeah, every scholarship's different, and they look for different things in it. The Rothman Scholarship was about selecting someone that had already accomplished something really exceptional in their life. It wasn't like, we're going to place a bet on you, we think you're going to be a great lawyer. It was like Frank Rothman, the guy that founded the scholarship, he was like an attorney for MGM, for the NFL, for the NBA. He was like a larger than life figure that was this transcend. I think he was the CEO of MGM at one point as well, just transcended all these industry boundaries and accomplished a lot. And so they wanted to find someone that had these kind of multilateral accomplishments and had done something with their life. And I think it was probably the blend of my story. But I had 3.9, I had good grades and everything. I had a decent LSAT. That definitely helped. So once I was in law school, it was COVID, right? So it was weird because I moved, summer 2020 to downtown LA and where I'm at now, and just started school. And it was towards the end of the semester that one of my best friends, from school that also applied to law school with me, he was doing backflips and getting really big on TikTok. And he's like, dude, you have to make a video about your life story. People are gonna love it. You're gonna go viral. And I was like, dude, I don't know. That's not really my thing. He's like, dude,
it's weird to talk about yourself, right? Because in order to succeed, the people that succeed on social media, I'm sure you have realized this by now, are not the ones who necessarily even have the coolest story. It's the ones who can tell the coolest story, obviously, right? There's people that are, the smartest scientists are not the ones that have the biggest following. It's the guys like Andrew Huberman who are able to articulate the best, right? The guys that are able to speak the best, because it's advertising in a way. So I'm sure it can feel weird and almost like you need to brag about your story in order for it to be successful on social media.
Yeah, and that was the big question, is how do I tell this story? And I didn't have an ego about it where I thought it was something. I just sort of was. I mean, to be quite honest with you, ever since making it out of homelessness and getting my first apartment, I felt this overwhelming sense of gratitude constantly, because I knew what it was like to not have that. I knew what it was like to sleep in a Toyota Prius, a 2004 beater Toyota Prius. I knew that life. So I was just super grateful, and I was like, you know what, this is a good opportunity. Maybe sharing this will help people. And the only reason why I thought that was when I was doing academic speech and debate coaching, I think one of the things that helped me connect with my students a lot was this story of they would get coached by people that are 45-year-old history teachers and are sort of removed and don't really understand how modern communication works. But I was plugged in, and telling them my story of how I overcame everything was inspiring to them, because every teenager's going through something, man. Every teenager has insecurities. Every teenager has family problems and battles that they can't really explain or talk about and don't get recognition from the public. So it was a great way to connect with them. And I'm like, you know what? I know my story has inspired those people. Let me try to share it on social media and see what that does. And it worked. Immediately went viral. After 5 videos, I had the 5th video did millions and got me thousands of followers. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do? So from there, everyone was like, well, what do you do? What's your life like now? Like, how do you eat, and like, how do you train? What's your workout routine like? And so someone was like, what do you eat for lunch? And I was like, all right, shit. Well, there was a recipe I made. So it's a funny story. When I first moved into LA during peak COVID, I was still doing like online debate camps before law school started. And I had my mentor out helping me and everything. And we had like, bro, we were eating like terrible. Like we were working around the clock, 7 days a week. And we would just get these cheesecakes from Ralph's grocery store and like pound it. We just felt like shit the next day. And then my mentor was like, snap, he's like, I need something healthy. And I was like, you know what, fuck it. We're gonna make something healthy. So I made this like vegetable bowl, and I was like, this is a scholar bowl. It's gonna make us like intelligent, and it's like gonna make us lock in. And so I shared that recipe using kind of a unique filming angle where my camera was pointed down. You could see the street, you could see the table in front of me. It was kind of like cooking with a view. And it did about like 1 million views in 10 minutes.
Wow.
It's the fastest blow up of any video I've ever made. And it was like 3 years ago, it was March 21. And it did like 17 million views. A year later, it got me on Rachel Ray, and it doubled my followers overnight, like 180,000 gained. And so from there, it was like, oh, shit, I guess I got to make food, you know? Mm-hmm. But I was in law school, so it was like, all right, well, like, I kind of had this moment where one of my friends sat me down and was like, dude, like, you have to do social media. And I was like, dude, I'm not Logan Paul. And he's like, no, you don't get it. Like, you could be making, like, you can be a normal person that does his own thing and make tons of money on it. I didn't really understand it, but I was like, you know what? Law school's paid for. I already have a job with one of the best firms in the world, like as part of my scholarship, pretty much locked in. Might as well build the ramp and like, let's see what happens before graduation. If it doesn't work, cool. I'll just do law. Like I'll just do this top 5 law firm. Like, oh, that's so terrible, you know? But if it works, then maybe I don't do law at all. Like, wouldn't that be funny? And that was the thing, was like, wouldn't it be funny if I didn't do law after all of this? And then year 2 came around, it was like, wait a second. Like, this actually might fucking happen. Like, this might actually go down. And by year 3, it became, I had like a blow up on Instagram where I went from 20K to 200K in like a week off a series of viral videos that, again, had to do with me telling my life story again. And so that's when it was like, all right, we're locking in, we're doing this.
I think it's valuable to tell the life story because people might already like your content for whatever it is you're making, whether it is car videos, cooking videos, workout videos, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But then if they get to know you more as a person, now they're invested in the journey, right?
Right.
You're not just the person they go to for entertainment, you're the person they go to for advice, for whatever, right? So even though the cooking videos happen to do very well, like you can also be an influential figure far beyond that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think even though it might get repetitive, it's good to repeat the story over and over. And I find myself doing that with my content. I've talked a million times about like, right, my experience in college and how that helped me with my business and my first, and people sometimes will comment, I've heard this story already, but it's for the people who haven't yet.
Exactly.
That's how you bring them in.
Yeah. I think a big part of it too is recognizing that social media for so long has been really like performative, you know, like when we thought of what the influencer was in the 2010s, it was like the person taking selfies and it's all about them and everything else. And not to say that social media and attention seeking don't have correlation. Like, yeah, of course there's going to be people that do that. But the content creators that go the distance, that tend to last and have longevity, are people that build a personal brand and tell their stories. Those are the things that we connect with. Like when you form personal relationships with people, you don't just walk into a room and you're like, okay, like this person's kind of funny, I guess I'll just like be their best friend. Like you connect with them because there's a piece of their life that you resonate with. Yeah. And that's the thing that I guess like I didn't know at the time would work, but ended up being the secret sauce was I have a personal story that helps people. One of my friends has said that content either entertains, educates, or inspires, but the best content does all three. And so realizing that, I'm like, if I can find a way to help people, let's say, eat better, work out better, if I can inspire people through my life story, if I can entertain people by being funny and like staying lighthearted and being positive, like there's some future to this. Yeah. And it turned out I was right. It worked out.
Nice. You know? Well, do you have any advice when it comes to actually making content itself? Like the specifics of it. What have you found it makes your videos go that extra bit viral? Or do you see what I'm saying? Yeah, absolutely. Everyone has tips and tricks, right? Things that to the viewer you might not even realize, but it's something that they do to get your attention in the first couple seconds or to make you watch it again. It could be something as simple as saying like stick around to the end to find out why I do this.
I think the most important question to ask, like a question that will answer so many others in the process, because you could build a course out of that. Like there could be hours of like every single tip and trick. But one of the easiest starting questions is, what is like, take content that you personally would not scroll away from.
Yeah.
It's like unscrollable. You have to watch it. Study that, like, and imitate it. So what is it about the video that you saved and liked that makes it last and work for you? So that'll lead to things like, well, you definitely want to make sure that you have an excellent hook, or the first 3 seconds of your video are interesting or engaging, the best shot goes there. You want to make sure that you're like not wasting time or editing poorly. Those kinds of questions will absolve themselves and you can get into the math of it all. But the big question is, look, we're all humans. We all look at content and we scroll away a million times. Why do we not? But there's videos that we don't scroll away from. Like, why is that? And I think obsessing over that question and just asking yourself, would I scroll away from this video right now if I was making it? You know what I mean? It's a lot. That's, I think, a really important question.
And you need to be honest with it, and you need to recognize that. It can be easy to say, oh, this was a great one. And I found myself doing that every once in a while. Oh, this is a great video. And then I go and I watch it a couple of times. I'm like, you know what? It could be quite a bit better.
Yeah.
Or maybe I should just fucking trash it in the first place.
Yeah.
Altogether.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I think, dude, one of the things that you were mentioning right before we started recording actually was we're in his apartment right now. Penthouse Apartment, sweet setup. Like, the furniture is amazing. The view is amazing. It's a vibe. It's the goal, right? You first started in this building at one of the bottom floors in this tiny little apartment that was the size of your bedroom.
Yeah.
And as you've kind of leveled up in life, in income, in followers, in enjoyment, fulfillment, you've also leveled up in the building, gone higher and higher floors wise. I'm curious how that feels, and you can literally see your progress as it's like a timeline getting going on. Yes. What is that like?
Yeah, I think there were 2 key moments of me in my content journey where I had a sort of awakening where I sat down and was like, I realized the destination point that I needed to be. One of those, sort of off topic, but has to do with fitness, was like, I realized that it's going to be a lot harder for me to inspire people if I'm not in immaculate shape. Not because there's something wrong with being not in immaculate shape. It's just your influence grows the more in shape you are. Mm-hmm. And so, like, there's no longevity benefit to having 16-inch arms. You know what I mean? Like, that's not like necessary for functional reasons, and I'm not just, fixating on arm size or biceps or things like that, but like having a really exceptional physique, really taking care of yourself, just allows you to communicate with more people, because intrinsically people, the first thing they see about you is, oh, that's someone worth listening to.
Yeah.
Like, and that's, be that fair or not, be that bias or bad or whatever else you want to call it, it's reality,
I think that's, sorry to cut you off.
Please.
I think that's extremely valuable, because a lot of people these days talk about, like, be happy with what you are, right? And body size doesn't matter. And you kind of touched on it perfectly. I would love if everyone was super accepting and everyone saw right through your physical attributes, right? What you looked like on the outside. But we've been designed over thousands and thousands of years through evolution and biology to respect the people who are more physically fit, who are bigger, right? It's just how it works. Have you seen a difference in how people treat you in real life?
Oh yeah.
Just based on getting bigger but getting more fit?
Oh yeah. I mean, like, even at the most obvious level, you're someone that, like, I have a big professional network. Whenever someone's going through a metamorphosis and is like, shit, I need to get in shape, I'm like the first person they ask. And I love that, because I've amassed a lot of knowledge and I can usually help people pretty well. People 100% will make that distinction, right? Mm. So the first level was I had this moment like 2 years ago where I was like, I had some abs, like I wasn't out of shape, but I was like, I don't have an amazing body and I want to have that. And I really, really locked in on it. The second thing was I knew that I needed to have an amazing home space for so many reasons. For one, I wanted a space big enough that I could film in, create content in, etc. I have a huge passion for interior design. Like, half of the stuff in this apartment is custom. Yeah. Like I designed this, there's like, and I have a big penchant for that as sort of like my artistic endeavor. But at a bigger level, it's about incubating a certain type of feeling. Like, when you're in a museum and you see a piece of art, it just really makes you feel a certain way. And then that changes you. Like, you're never the same as a result of that. I'm living in a museum. I'm living, not just in any museum, but I'm living in a museum of art that I've actually created, which is even more special. It's more profound. So in sort of identifying that, making the physique exceptional and the home exceptional were 2 things where I'm like, I have this long-term vision for it. So we have like an 8th floor in our building where we have a pool, and you can look up and see all the apartments. So I started off on the 13th floor, and it was my first semester of law school, and I was like, I need to get to the top of the building before I graduate. And like, most of the units were taken because this is a new building, it's really popular, and But also units are expensive, obviously, as you go up. And so I was like, I need to find a way. By the end of the first semester, I made it to the second highest floor. Like I just had the same floor plan, moved up to like the 33rd floor.
Right below us right now?
What was that?
Right below us right now?
Yeah. If you drilled a hole through my bedroom, you would get in my old apartment. Yeah. So it was the same, like similar floor plan and everything, but slightly higher ceilings. And I was like, all right, I'm onto something. And then I was like, if I can just make it upstairs. There's this beautiful 1-bedroom apartment. It's over 1,000 square feet. Open concept. I had such a unique idea for how I wanted to do the layout. I had all this I had furniture in my head I had already designed to fit the space.
You're planning on it before it's even happening, which is great.
Yes,
you need to visualize this. You're visualizing what your dream apartment is going to look like. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And I shot like some like Super Bowl commercial content with Hexclad, this kitchenware brand that Gordon Ramsay runs, and I was shooting with QCP and Thomas Petru, the guy that founded the Hype House. So I'm in front of like brilliant, like excellent, genius content creators who've gone on way before. And I'm just like standing in front of giants, trying to learn, seeing what I can benefit from. And as I sat with them, I was just like, the number one problem in my life is that I'm living in a small studio. Like, and it's fine for me, but I have a dog. I can't host people. I can have one friend over or a date, but it's like...
I'm sure it also feels like constraining, right? It's hard to be creative. One thing I'm trying to do right now is put myself in the best position physically to be creative, right? That comes both with the body you live in, right? Making sure that you're feeling healthy, you feel good, you feel energetic all day long, but also where you live, right?
Yeah.
So to kind of pivot real quick, I'd love to know your opinion on risk, right? At what level in your professional career did you have to feel like I'm making enough money for myself to feel comfortable to move up that floor and pay a lot more versus like what's the benefit of that going to be in my career?
Yeah, it was like how I analyze the risk.
Yeah. In general, in your life, how do you analyze risk?
I just think that there are certain things that are worth taking risks in. Like I think it's about identifying classes of risks that are worth really like jumping for. Obviously, it was a price hike to go up and stuff, but it also came on the heels of like I had like some of my best months of brand deals set up on social media. So it wasn't like it basically doubled my rent, but it wasn't like tripling or quadrupling it. It wasn't taking me to an insane place in terms of cost. But the risk for me was like, I think the biggest risk of it all was I've got this law degree. I've got a top 5 law firm with an offer that I've already like kind of said yes to. Like the biggest risk I ever took was looking at my law firm and being like, I'm out. Like long live TikTok. I'm going to do this. And so that was the biggest.
How long ago was that?
Like the decision?
Yeah.
Less than a year. It was like July. Well, okay. Not sure. The decision, I announced the decision in July. The decision I actually made the day that I got this apartment. And the reason why I love the way that you've put this is that your part of the environmental change is your own physical form, right? Like your soul inhabits your body. And when your body looks good, feels good, is energized, you look in the mirror and you get inspired and motivated by that. And then the second level for me is I live in a home that inspires me and has an environmental sort of motivation to it. And that's really important for me. But the day I got this apartment, I was like, oh, it's over. Like I'm done. Like I've got it. Like if I have this apartment, I can design it perfectly. I can film here. I can live here for years. So like the way that I designed this apartment, it took me a year and a half to design everything from scratch. It was painstaking, extremely expensive. I put like close to 6 figures of design into a rental apartment, which is shocking for people. But I knew I was like, I'm going to be here for the long haul and I will be set, I don't want to say for life, but for the foreseeable future if I'm here. But you can't like, there's no way you can tell your law firm like, yo, I'm out. It was real. And then come back and be like, hey.
That was my next question is going to be like, what happens for, it won't happen. You can never think to yourself, what if it doesn't work out? But is all that time out the window, that law degree, is it completely useless now?
No, not at all. I mean, I didn't take the bar. The bar is what you take to, do you know all of the laws, basically. And then once you pass that, then you're, an official attorney. Like I have a law degree, but I'm not a lawyer in that sense because I haven't passed the bar and I never took it and don't ever intend to. But yeah, it's a very do or die. Like, I mean, yes, I could. I mean, I say do or die. I could go back. I could take the bar. I could go through all of that. I won't ever. Like, I would do a million other things before I do law. And the thing that so I have like a good friend of mine from college. His dad is like high level accountant, is sold, he's done like 9-figure transactions before. Just like respect this guy so much. And he's like pulled himself up by his bootstraps and everything. And he was like, Joseph, like what if social media doesn't work out? And the thing that like I didn't explain to him at the time that I think people need to understand is like social media is not a monolith. Like social media is like an amalgamation of like infinite income streams. It's a socialization and networking opportunity that is whatever you want it to be. You can make money from YouTube just on the views you make, or you could do brand deals or start a separate business. And the best creators will do all three and more.
And you'll meet people that will allow you to kind of fit into new industries that you never even knew existed.
Yes.
There's people making money off social media that aren't in front of the camera, that are behind, that are on the back end.
Yes.
And they make money in the weirdest of ways, and that won't go away. Yes. And you also kind of train your brain to figure out new ways to make money. And so I don't think it's like, oh, what if my account dies one day? I'm screwed.
Right.
You've introduced yourself to a whole new world that you didn't know existed. And I don't know, me being in it myself, understanding what you're saying, like, it's not nearly as risky as everybody thinks. I feel like it's riskier to go get a normal job because then your future is in somebody else's hands.
Yes. And you've also eclipsed yourself out of other income-making opportunities. Like law is mutually exclusive with social media income. Like as an attorney, I don't know the exact rule, but like you can't have a side hustle as an attorney. Like you creates conflicts of interest and stuff. Like that's not a thing that you're allowed to do. Whereas with social media, every new income stream benefits the others. So as I make more money 100%. From views, like I had a month, like the month of late March to late April, I gained 1 million followers on Instagram from a recipe series. And I earned a lot by Instagram standards. Yeah. Not a lot of money actually, but like Instagram doesn't really pay its creators that well, sorry. But like I earned a lot of money in that month on that growth. And guess what? That also benefits brand deals. It benefits my coaching company Protagonist. It benefits the cookbook that I launched. So everything is symbiotic. That's what I love the most. And it's the easiest path to financial freedom I think that exists.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I've experienced personally is, I like how you said that. I think it flows really well. Everything you're working on benefits each other, right? I have my business. I have little side hustles I do on the side. I have social media. The better my business does, the more validity what I say has, right? If I'm trying to give advice on social media, the more money that's coming into my business, now I'm more of an authority figure, right? Oh, if I say you should go do this, if you're a young entrepreneur, if I don't have a business, then I'm kind of just yapping, right? I'm a course guy. But if I have a business that's doing well, it's like, okay, he might be worth listening to. He's young, he's successful somewhat, but also if social media does really well too, that funnels views, that funnels traffic to your business. So it all builds off of each other. And that's one thing that I actually haven't heard anyone say before is you have essentially no limit whatsoever to the opportunity if you're doing something like content. Because there are so many different ways you could pull it. Whether it's working for other people, starting your own brand, coaching, there's the opportunities are limitless.
Yeah.
People don't want to admit it, but people want to be told what to do. Most people. That's why that is why people love the 9-to-5. They say they hate it. They want to start their own business, they think, but one of the hardest parts about owning your own business is not, or being a content creator, whatever, is not that you don't have that steady income. It's simply trying to figure out what you have to do on a daily basis. There's never a playbook. There's never a blueprint. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a content creator, every day you wake up, it's like, okay, I have to go figure out what I have to do today. And that can be great, but it's also very challenging for a lot of people.
Yeah, I would have so many mornings where I would wake up and I'd be like, all right, well, shit, I guess I'm making an omelet recipe today. Like, I don't know, like, should I talk about my shelves? Like, who knows? And until you have a specific direction for your content, it is ambiguous. And the ambiguity is, it is the price of the unbelievable, overwhelming benefits you get by being a successful content creator. And I mean, I'm not one to brag, but like, the quality of life that I have is astonishing. Like the quality of life I have is so much higher than I would need to be happy. And I have to remind myself of that constantly and be grateful all the time. Like I wake up, I go to the gym, I film part of it, I come home, I work on recipes. And by the end of the day, I've done everything that I want to do and I've made more than the people working at the law firm, at some of the best law firms in the world. I've made more than some of the partners that day.
Yeah, now you do. But here's the thing though, for most of your social media career, I would assume the first couple of years, you were making less than you would have made as a prestigious attorney at a great firm. So that's the thing. It's just like with me too, like right out of college, I have my business, I didn't go get a job. I didn't make anything. I worked on my business and I did social media for 1.5 years before I paid myself for the first time.
Yes.
A year and a half before I got that first check from TikTok that I didn't even know was going to come. It just all of a sudden, creator fund one day, and it's kind of gone now. You don't make much anymore.
Right.
But a year and a half I worked, and I'm assuming it's something similar for you, without getting paid, and now you see those results. So I think anyone who looks at like the life of an entrepreneur or a content creator, anyone who has a life that seems really exciting and thrilling, there is time you have to put in at the beginning where you aren't going to see any results. And you have to be willing to do that and take the risk of it not working out.
Yeah, there's this term I love, it's called punctuated equilibrium. And it refers to the idea that a lot of your growth, like we all understand the idea that like growth isn't linear, it's not a straight line up, that's true. But the way that growth actually functions, especially in social media, is you grind like crazy and you flatline, and then in like a day, you'll have this massive spike, and then all of a sudden you're on a brand new stair, right? And then you travel along again for a while and you have this massive spike. You have this rapid period of evolution and growth in an extremely short period of time that is a direct function of all the work you did before.
Yep.
So like on social media, I've been on Instagram for about 3 years. I've been on TikTok for 3.5, 4, closer to, about 3.5 at this point. So the first year and a half on Instagram, I got to 20,000 followers. The second year and a half, I got to 1.6 million. And let's be perfectly clear, I was at around 600K about 6 weeks ago. So like
you've had a crazy growth spurt recently.
Spike. But it's, and of course, like you look at that and you're like, oh wow, that's like so fortunate and everything. But it's like, yeah, you know how many other like it's a recipe series called Easy Gains that blew me up. But like, dude, you know how many other food series failed before that? Like how many times I like tried to stick the landing, and then one day was like, wait, what if I open the recipe series with a montage of like the sexiest recipes I've ever done? And what if I do like a little bicep flex at the start?
One little change.
Yeah, one tweak. I was like, I'm gonna try this out. And then it you know, the fifth episode of the series did 15 mil. Then 2 days later, I did a video that did 25 mil.
Yeah,
and it was like,
nuts.
What on earth is happening, you know? Like, I think we did like 75 million views in like 2 weeks, you know? And it's like, you look at that and you're like, oh wow, like that's really fortunate. But for the months and months, I was shadow banned on Instagram, and I knew I was. They told me I was. I posted
Wait, how does that work? What do you mean by that?
Oh God. So like Instagram will sometimes tell you if your like account is not being shown to people. Like they'll say that you have like a strike or something. Bro, it would make you so mad. It was a photo of me from a full year ago, so like September 2022, of me like doing a lateral race. And it was a shot from the back. The lighting looked cool, looked like Batman-esque. I had like my traps are popping. It was a pump pig. And I think the caption was like, slaughter yourself? You can guess where this is going. They, full year after the photo was posted, randomly got flagged for like promoting like self-harm and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, that's dumb. So I appealed it and explained, and I won.
Yeah.
A day later, the exact same strike came, and they wouldn't let me appeal it, and they said, you lose. And I have like meta support. Yeah, you lose. And I wrote out like a full explanation. I'm like, how dare you not understand basic semantics? Like, that obviously this would never mean that in any, like, it's like if someone said, great job, man, you're really killing it. You're like, oh, wait, what? Murder? Like, what?
Well, it's probably their AI or something that flagged it.
Well, yeah,
right?
but then I talked to real people. Like, I had meta support because I was, I paid for the verification and everything, as like a lot of people did. And they still were like, yeah, we decided to not. So I was shadow banned for 3 months.
Wow.
So like, what's your motivation to make content then? I still had to.
Yeah.
I still had to, but every video I made wouldn't be shown to new followers. So I couldn't grow like for 3 straight months. And then immediately after that, just started spiking until.
How do you get out of that hole? You just have to keep at it, and eventually.
They barred. It was like a 3-month bar.
Wow.
So they told me like until December 20th. You also can't monetize. I also couldn't do brand deals. So I was fortunate that most of my posting dates didn't really get hurt by that, or I could put them on TikTok instead. But yeah, it's dark. But the point is, all of the work you put in, like if you expect daily results from it, give up. Like,
you can never put a timeline on any sort of results. That's what I've realized, and this is like a saying that I tell myself all the time. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot worry about, is it going to happen next month, next year? You just have to do what you know is best, and eventually it will. And it'll happen when it's time. That's the thing. It might take a month. It might take 5 years. It doesn't matter. You just have to do it until it does. And whether that's like with the podcast, with the business, you just have to keep going, and eventually it'll work out for you. my question for you is like, how long in the beginning was it until you saw that first little spark and you're like, wait a minute, there might be something here? How long were you making content for before there was the first little bit of results?
Yeah. I will say I'm sort of an exception in part of this because like I said, I started off by telling my life story, and it was like this
that's right.
second
right
video blew up. But there's a good point to be made here that like blowing up on TikTok, kind of everyone in 2020 that blew up on TikTok had to make this decision of like, okay, how do I turn this from like dance virality into a business? And that didn't happen on Instagram until I blew up from like 20K to 200K in a week. And what happened was I had a workout video that I posted, and someone hilariously commented, they were like, damn, this guy must have been through some shit. And then I responded, I was like, yeah, I grew up in a cult, and I was kicked out and made homeless. And he was like, wait, what? Like, what the fuck? Like, I've never heard about this. And then I realized, I was like, wait, I haven't told this story again. And it's
been a while since you had done it. That's why you have to keep bringing it up every once in a while.
Yeah, it'd been a year and a half. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a video. And so I made a video. I took my phone and I was like, my name is Joseph. I lived a strange and wonderful, I said, my name is Joseph. I'm 26 years old and I've lived a strange and wonderful life. And just chronicled everything. And I think I can pretty safely say of any video I've worked on, I feel like that might be the most masterful video I've made. It took me multiple days, and I'm sourcing clips multiple years old. Every single clip is like designated to follow along a piece of the script, and it's meaningful to me. It took me forever.
How long of a video is this?
Probably 40 seconds.
Interesting, and that took a couple days to make.
Yes,
your content is very high quality. It's edited a lot. That's something that I'm trying to get better at right now, because mine always started with literally just me pull out my phone, yap.
Yeah.
Like yap on the TikTok app itself, post it. I didn't edit. I don't have a script. I just talk. And sometimes it works, but I'm starting to realize that like this high quality content is really where you start to see some serious results.
Especially on Instagram.
Yeah.
Instagram favors, like, I haven't really grown on TikTok in over a year. Like, I posted the exact same recipe series, same easy gain stuff, zero growth. Absolutely not. And like 10,000, 20,000 views every video. Well, I'll get, I had, for the longest time, I had half the followers on Instagram and got 5 or 10 times the views,
Interesting. And you're posting the exact same content.
Identical times. Like, and it was the same, it was only better content that I posted after I blew up on TikTok. Like, I didn't make anything worse. Like, I only improved at it, but it just didn't grow on the platform. And Instagram really favors cinematic, highly produced, well-formatted video content. And there's a market for yapping. There is. People need that. People want to see that. People consume it. But there's also a market for like very well-produced, ornate storytelling where, basically like when I sat my editor down and taught him the process that I use, I was basically like, you need to understand that this is surgical. Every single part of the script is deliberate because I'm very careful about the scripts I write, and every single line of the script or phrase of the script is going to attach to a certain word. And like, there are reasons why you won't put a clip one word sooner. And I'll explain those to you, but like that's the level of detail. And when you think about it that way,
and no one probably realizes that who's watching. They just see the video, they think, oh, this is really cool. Save.
Yeah, it's so formatted.
I'll save this for later, but they don't realize that this is taking hours and hours and hours of planning and structure and setup to do.
Yeah, and just toying with. I think the other thing too is it's a lot of people don't talk about this, but the choice of sound was also really important, and not just from choose the most viral sound of the list, but like I chose like piano or classical music, or not out of some like conniving strategy, but it was music like I resonated with. Like a song that I've chosen to use a lot is it's from the movie Her. It's about this movie. It's like this movie where this guy falls in love with his computer.
Oh yeah, with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, which funny story by the way. I'm just realizing now as I'm telling the story. One of my favorite movies of all time. I love the movie, and it's the movie that inspired me to get an apartment like this. Like the floor-to-ceiling windows. There's these scenes where Theodore's like looking out of his window somberly. The soundtrack was written by Arcade Fire and somebody else. It is a masterful sound. It's like one of the best movie soundtracks I've heard. So good. And I found out after I moved here that they shot that movie a block away from here.
No way.
At the Watermark Penthouse, like a block away. That's like where they and I watched the movie again. I was like, that's my view.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Kind of full circle.
But the soundtrack, like the choice of music as well is really important because music conveys so much emotion, right?
Yeah.
So like you can make background music like YouTubers do or whatever else, but the thing I love so much about short form is it was an opportunity for me to take incredibly evocative music, like music that was conveyed such deep transformation and metamorphosis, whether it's like Odessa or some other kind of like really intensely almost cinematic artist and put that into the video to where people could appreciate it. And I don't think a lot of people did that. People would do that with viral sounds, but like people were not usually as like, oh, this is my favorite song, I'm going to plug this in. And that helped to reach a ton of people.
Nice. You know? Well, my biggest takeaway from everything you just said, because I think that's super valuable, is number one, social media today is way more saturated than it was when you and I both started 3-ish years ago, right? Yeah. Back then, everyone was still watching content. My only regret in life right now is I wish I had started social media sooner. I wish I had started TikTok, just I'm sure you wish I had started sooner as well. Back when like the Bryce Halls and the Josh Richards got involved right at the beginning, because
of course
everyone was on their phone watching, everyone was consuming, no one was producing because it was like weird, right? I'm not making fucking TikToks, you know what I mean? But these days, everyone's producing, everyone wants to be famous, but everyone still thinks of it as, oh, it's easy, social media, right? I could do that. Or they're just talking to their phone. But the reality is, from what I'm hearing from you, is you do have to put a shit ton of time, energy, and planning into these to see some results.
I think so. I think the big question about social media is like, I think social media is fundamentally about community building.
Yeah.
Like I think that's the most important part of it. Virality is maybe one means of getting an announcement in front of a community, but the building process of it is about cultivating a consistent type of content that people can attach to. You're kind of like someone's safe place. Like they come in, they're like, well, I know I'm gonna get good recipes with Joe. Shit, that's cool. And I'll get messages from people that are like, I watch your videos every single day. You've helped transform our relationship with food. For many people, I'm the most inspiring person in their life, and I have no idea who they are. And that's an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
But you have to put effort into cultivating that. It's not going to happen quickly or accidentally. You have to be very deliberate about that.
And a lot of people get lazy too, for sure. Once they have the following, once they have that exposure at the beginning, they start to get lazy. Oh, I can just fuck off a little bit. I know I have a lot of friends who have blown up on social media and no longer put as much effort in because they think they don't have to.
Right.
But in reality, it's kind of screwing you over. And it's only really a matter of time, in my opinion, before somebody else takes your spot in a way.
Yeah, I think that's where the race gets set. It's now, it's 1852, the 1849 gold rush. Sacramento is full of people that are digging, and it's like, if you're gonna stay in this race, the longevity variables are things like, how good are you at sticking to the task of cultivating a community? How deliberate are you about that process? Or are you still looking for the dopamine hit of virality?
Yeah.
Which a lot of people still are, unfortunately. So you have to be way more conscious of that.
For sure. I have an important question for you because I think you're a very intelligent guy. One of my best friend's fathers is the CEO of I'm not going to say which company it is, but they're a multi-billion-dollar company, Fortune 100 company, 7 private jets for just this company. He's one of the smartest guys I know. Not an entrepreneur type, but a businessman. And the other day I was hanging out with him and his kid and our other friends, and he was explaining to us the importance of the concept of sunk costs. So many people these days will put some time and energy into something and they will not leave that behind because they're like, well, I already did it, so I have to stick with it.
Yeah.
But I think you're a good person to touch on this because you put a shit ton of time and energy and sacrifice into your law degree, right? That's not easy. That takes time. And then you kind of just left it behind and you're like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's cool, right? But so many other people having gone through that would probably be like, well, I have to, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life now because I dedicated the first couple of years to this.
Yeah, 2 thoughts on that. The first is that as time goes on, people are going to, the job market is exploding in all types of ways, and people are transitioning in and out of jobs faster than they ever have before, which is why, your grandparents, well-intended as they aren't really the best sources to be like, this is the job that you should do, because people change jobs all the time. Like, I think it's like the average person changes jobs like 4 times every 6 years or some number like, and
apparently you make more and more when you change jobs.
Yeah,
right. I've seen a lot of studies on that.
It's about optimization because you're following where the money leads, and if the market's going to change a lot, if the industry's going to change, that's going to make a big difference. But I think that the idea about sunk costs is maybe part of it is just as much as getting out of your head and being like getting over the fact that you put something in and not following what's called the sunk cost fallacy, like you're pointing out. But I think another part of it is recognizing the value, recognizing the extent to which it's not a sunk cost. Like, people look at law school and are like, what a waste. Some unnamed relatives of mine like actually said very like painfully that, you didn't deserve your scholarship because like you're not going to go practice law. That doesn't make it worth it. But I'm like, it's not like the law degree is useless to me. Like I negotiate contracts every single day.
Yeah,
I get a blue chip brand will send me a contract and then I'll redline it for them. Meaning I'll go through and I'll create revisions and send it back and be like, yeah, this is not enforceable in the state of California. What the fuck you think you're doing to me? Like, and it takes them off guard and puts me in such a better bargaining position because A, they trust me more.
Yeah.
I'm not some random, 20-year-old that like twerked and got 1 million followers. Like I have like an actual following and I have a degree behind me. But it also means that like I show up to the negotiating table and they're going to respect me because I have accomplishments external to what I have. I think one of the main things that law taught me and that I gleaned from it that I have forever is it refined all of my communication into being incredibly precise. Like I was a good, heartfelt, emotional, sensory communicator. All things that you need. You need to be emotional. You need to be sensory. You need to be conscientious. But law made me chiseled. Law made me very dialed. And I think that has helped me so much in many ways in the social media content that I create, but also just in communication and in the business development that I have. So it's not a loss. In fact, if anything, like having a law degree in the social media space is very useful. Like it's like one of the most useful spaces. It's not like a med degree where I'm like, yeah, I guess I know what a cell is made of now. Like it's actually useful intel. So I use it all the time. And I think like for someone that's in college, like you hear, I think it's so common for people on social media to be like, college sucks. Use my dropshipping course. Yeah. It's like, okay, all right. But the thing about college is, and that people miss is like there's these two camps. Neither of them are using nuance. One of them is like you have to do college the old way, and you have the new entrepreneurs that are like you need to sell this shit coin that I just made for you. You know what I mean? That's like worthless, but do it anyways. And I think the nuance is college presents such profound socialization, networking
100%.
Opportunities. Like
overlooked too.
I got a philosophy degree as well as business management and one in cognitive science. And I gotta say, I think philosophy, just my plug, best degree you can get. Not because you go out and teach philosophy after. People act like philosophy is the most useless degree. Philosophy is actually the best major to take if you want to go to law school. It's not pre-law. It's not poli-sci. It's not psychology. It's philosophy because philosophy, unlike almost any other major, is directly targeted at the way that you think and the way that you form ideas. Like the actual content of philosophy, sure, you're learning about Hobbes and existentialism and whatever else, but the reasoning that you have to do and the critical thinking is what really transforms you and what gets you ahead. So I think that for people that are in college that are like, oh, I don't know if I should do social media, I don't think you need to think about it that way. You might graduate, get your degree, and still be able to use everything that you've learned in a practical sense to be a great entrepreneur. I think it's available for so many more people.
I agree with everything you just said, and I think that goes back to a lot of people come up to me all the time, friends, family members. What if it doesn't work out? So what? Okay, I'll go do something else.
I'll figure it out.
I'll go do something else. Yeah. If you start a business and you work on it for 8 years and it fails, everyone's gonna say, oh, that's too bad, you just wasted your time.
Right.
How much fun did you have? How much did you learn? How many really important connections did you make? Right? Like, sure, the idea of something failing sounds shitty, but you leveled up a lot as a person. And this also ties into that, thing we were talking about earlier about seeing results, right?
Yeah.
Money is really the only thing that's like measurable in terms of success.
Right.
But you are getting better and better and better every single day. And then maybe 8 years later, like I just said, is when you actually see, boom. That's how I feel like most really successful founders lead their life, right? They're building, no results. Boom, one day, oh my God, now I'm worth $100 million, right? Because I got that exit, or we got that huge investment, or we IPO'd, whatever. You cannot really measure content creation or entrepreneurship unless there's a number attached to it. But you're learning the skills to be able to get to that point the entire time.
Yeah.
So as long as that's what's so interesting about entrepreneurship to me that I find really fascinating. And it's also on the note of college that you were just talking about. For me, a lot of people were like, oh, college was kind of a waste for you, right? Do you regret going to, I get this comment all the time, and DM, do you regret going to college?
Yeah.
No, because in college, I went from the kind of the loser to my content. I don't know if you saw the early videos, it was about being fraternity president and stuff like that, right? I had a whole series called Lessons I Learned as Fraternity President.
Yes.
That first series, just like your cooking video series, is what blew me up. If I didn't go to college, if I wasn't in the fraternity, I wouldn't have become that person who could then go on social media. So I don't think college is a waste. I fully agree with you. And a lot of people these days are tweaking because they're like, do I need to go? If I want to do content, if I want to do social media, I should avoid it. I don't think so. I think you should go and experience as many things as you can, learn in as many areas as you can, and not focus on the money right away, and then the money will come later.
Yeah, I think another part of it too is you're always have some self-compassion and understand that you're actively learning what your desires and interests are. You're never, especially at a young age, you're almost never at a point where you can fully say, yeah, I understand everything there is to know about my own desires. You're still in the process of pursuing what those are. I've been everything from, like one of my first jobs was, I worked as a rep for Scott's Miracle-Gro at like Lowe's. So I'd wake up at 5 a.m. and like load mulch in Home Depot, and like people would be in line like looking at weed killer thinking I worked at Home Depot. They're like, which one should I get? And I'm like, that's Scott, that one. Like, you should get that one. And they're like, why? And I'm like, well, you get what you pay for. And it's a meaningless line, but it always worked. It closed every time. And I just told people to buy that. And I've been a speech and debate coach. I've run an eco lawn care business. I've done dog sitting. I've been a wedding security guard. Like, I've followed.
Wedding security guard.
Yes, exactly. Like, I had a friend, my like best friend at the time, his like older sister was like an event planner, and she was like, "You kind of look like you hit the gym. Get out there." Nice. No training, like just kind of like man the field a bit. So I've done all these different careers, and I think that following where that leads is super important. Like you're always learning about what your interests are, and that means that they're going to change, and that's okay. Follow them.
Yeah.
Don't stop.
Nice. Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, I have some, we're kind of wrapping it up towards the end here, so I have some rapid fire questions.
Go for it.
And you can answer them however you want. Number one, do you deal with imposter syndrome ever?
You want to define that a bit? I know it is, but I want to hear how.
Do you ever find yourself in a position where you are leading a life to some other people that might seem like the most glorious thing? I mean, maybe my definition is even off a little bit, but to me, imposter syndrome is like, as an entrepreneur, as a content creator, I need to be so delusional. I need to believe in myself so much and feel like I am bulletproof, because that is the best way to lead. That is the best way to get people to buy into your story. But in reality, I'm just doing all this for the first time, right? I'm not some big successful entrepreneur yet in my own mind, but I almost need to convince myself I am, because that's what gives me the confidence to take huge risks.
Yes.
That's my understanding of it.
There's sort of a reciprocal, there's an inversion to imposter syndrome I really like, which is the typical formulation of imposter syndrome is, oh God, I'm in this room with all these powerful, successful people, but I'm a fraud.
Yeah.
I really shouldn't be here. The inversion of that is, I tricked everyone and I made it. Suck it. Yeah. I'm here. You know what I mean? Like, and then why wouldn't you celebrate that? If you're in the room with a bunch of other high-powered people that are there and you feel like an imposter, why not just feel like you're a spy? Like, why not feel like you're a smart detective, like you're in the room? But I think losing sight of that, the question of imposter syndrome is like, I think it assumes that there's some like natural or correct order for your placement in life. And I think that that's bullshit. I think that like just what you said, you should be delusionally confident about your own abilities and find out where their limits are. Like, I would so much rather live my life, delusionally and way over the top confident about my abilities and hit the wall than undercut myself even 10%.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I want to say too about entrepreneurship is, and like, I think this is the important thing to identify is, you and I probably have a much deeper motivation for business than other people. If you just grow up comfortably and you want to maintain what you have and do a 9 to 5, there's nothing wrong with that.
Agreed.
I'm trying to build generational wealth. I'm trying to.
That was going to be my next question: is what's your why?
Yes, it's. I think in a nutshell, having experienced so much trauma and loss over the course of my life, I think the most powerful thing you can do when you've experienced tremendous loss is to become the thing that you've always needed. So like one of the most important things for me in my own life will be, I want to adopt a kid someday. I want to have my own kid, but I also want to adopt a kid that doesn't have a dad. And I want to give him at 6 years old what I didn't have at 6. I want to become the hero that I always needed, right?
Yep.
When I get older, and I've never spoken about this publicly, but I will share it, I'm a much larger, and I'm hesitant to share things that I haven't done yet that I want to do, but I will say, just to put it out there, like I do want to start a foundation when I'm older for kids that don't have dads. And I think that would be the most meaningful extension of my wealth. I think that'd be the best way to use it when I get older. So my visions are bigger. I also my family was insanely poor and is, I obviously don't have relationships with my family. I don't really know what's going on. I know that they're probably not living like me, not to toot my horn, but I know there's no way that they are. And I know that, my grandparents, my great grandparents immigrated here from Sweden and everything else. there's never been money in this family. And I'm like, how badass is it going to be to be the patriarch of the family, to be the grandpa that everyone looks up to and is like, yeah, he changed it.
Fucking love that. Hell yeah.
He changed it. Like, we were poor. All of my ancestors look back at me and they're like applauding me from heaven. Like, yeah, dude, we went, my grandpa, served, like he went through the Dust Bowl. My grandma lived through the Great Depression. They suffered. And then it all changed with Joseph. That's a sick ass story to tell. So that's like what motivates me more than anything.
Dude, well, number one, it's funny you brought that up because my next question was going to be, how are you going to raise your kids? Which we can also go back to, but I think that's great. But dude, I think in order to, what's the best way to say this? Break through in the family lineage, right? In that cycle, in order to become the one that puts your family on a different path. If your entire generation, if every generation before you was going this way, and you want to do something better, you want to go try this new path, I've never heard of a story where this didn't take place. There is going to be like incredible conflict there.
Yes.
What are you doing? This is not the way to go. There's disapproval, there's disappointment, right? And you have to be the one to like kind of break those chains off you and take that new, undiscovered path in order to get there. But if you are able to do that, that is going to be the sickest story. And I think a lot of people like to look at their misfortunes and their past with like shame and guilt.
Yeah.
Or maybe even just being looking at it as like dreadful. When in reality, I think if you have a very tough past, it's kind of an opportunity for you to create this awesome story.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. There's this, my mentor once told me, as I was dealing with a bunch of bullshit during law school and a bunch of additional unneeded stress, he said, the path of the hero is filled with inexplicable suffering. And that's not an accident. Like, it is a rite of passage that the hero, the person that overcomes everything, is going to be torn apart.
For sure.
Is going to deal with bullshit that's like, why the hell is this happening to me, And I'm not a super biblical person, but like, I was named Joseph after the person in the Bible, and like, we know the story well. Like, he gets thrown into a pit by all of his brothers. Homie was trying to chill. Like, he wasn't like a bad guy. And of course he had all these moments where he's like, God, why is this happening to me? Like, how could this possibly be? And it's like, because you were destined for something greater. You were destined for more than mediocrity. And that's how I feel. Like, when I had my darkest moments as a homeless person trying to figure it all out, I would always like intensely visualize the lineage of all my ancestors looking at me, like cheering me on, like remember why you're here. You know what I mean? And like, when you hold on to that deeply, it's very, very hard to not be motivated.
So on the note of kind of like envisioning your ideal future and doing whatever you have to do to pull yourself out of a dark pit, that's another question I wanted to ask, is like, whether whether everything in your life is going wrong or you just feel extremely unmotivated, is that what you do to kind of pull yourself out of that pit? Is like envisioning this turning into the coolest story ever, you being the hero of your own story type of scenario?
I think that's that's definitely one really powerful example. There's one that I pull from more frequently, which is I externalize a version of myself that I really admire. And I ask, what would that person do in this scenario? Because the truth is, your life is going to keep going on. No matter what horrible, shitty things happen to you, your life is going to keep going on. You've at least got a few years left. No way you're done forever.
For sure.
And in those few years, you're not only going to have a memory of what happened to you, you're going to have a story to tell about what happened to you. What story do you want to tell? Like, when I was going through homelessness, I was like, I don't want to tell a story about how like sad and pitiful and broken I was. I want to tell a story about how I got the fuck up. I still found a job. I still worked. I lived with a friend's place. I paid them a little bit of rent. It was cheap, but they were nice to me, and it was what I could afford. And I busted my ass, and I made it out, and now I'm here. And I always wanted to tell that story. So bearing that in mind, I kept my chin up. I kept looking ahead, because I'm like, I don't want to tell the story of a guy who's just broken and disappointed. And I've done the same thing too in like breakups. Like, around the turn of the year, I had a very painful, like just the most eviscerating heartbreak I've ever had in my life. And as I went through it, I was like anxious about what would happen, if it would ever turn into something again, if I'd get a chance to reconnect with this person. And there was no way to answer those questions factually. But the thing I did to resolve it was I said, well, what kind of man do I want to be in this space? Do I want to be the anxious guy?
Yeah.
Do I want to be the like, oh God, like, is it going to work out? Like, what if we never talk again? Like, what if this is the end? What if I never find love? Or do I want to be the man that trusts deeply, that says, this is uncomfortable, and the time will pass anyways.
Yeah.
I'm still going to make the most of my life, and I'm going to build a beautiful, incredible life that I can share with someone someday. That energy, like that movement is what helps the most. But it's really like, the thing that's always done it for me is like, there's going to be a Joseph in the future. What does he want right now? Like, what is the future version of me advising this current version to do? And that's proved really successful.
Nice.
Yeah.
That kind of reminds me of one thing that I like to focus on a lot whenever anything is going wrong whatsoever, is that, are you familiar with the story of the Chinese farmer?
No, relay.
Really?
I
I
maybe haven't heard.
Dude, this is the best story ever. I'll try and summarize it really quickly. So there's a poor Chinese farmer. Him and his son live on this farm. Mother's not around. I think she's dead or something. Doesn't matter, right? They live on this farm together. They have one donkey and then a couple crops, right?
Right.
One day the donkey runs away. The son, freaking out, runs to the father. Dad, we lost our donkey or horse, whatever it was. Like, we're screwed. Like, what are we gonna fucking do? Like, we have nothing to like help us like, till the soil. And he goes, maybe, right? And he goes, what do you mean maybe? We're fucked. Like, what do we do? We're screwed. And the dad goes, maybe. The next day, the horse comes back and it brings with it like 5 wild horses. So the kid is ecstatic. He's like, Dad, we're rich. Like, we can sell these horses. We can breed them now. We have more than one. Right? This is awesome. And the father goes, maybe. And then the next day, the son is out trying to tame one of the wild horses, throws him off. Kid breaks his back. Right? All of the local town comes over to like console the father. Like, you have only one son. He's like, permanently handicapped now. Like, we're so sorry. This is horrible. Like, what are you gonna do? And he goes, maybe, right? The next day, the conscription officers come over because there's a civil war, and they're drafting local young able-bodied men for this war.
Yeah.
And the father's like, well, my son's like, paralyzed. Like, he broke his back. He can't come, right? And then all the soldiers go off and get like slaughtered in this battle a couple weeks later. And the whole town comes over and they go, this is great. Like, this is meant to be. And the father goes, maybe. The point is, you don't know ever if anything is good or bad in the moment. You only find out if what you thought was terrible was good or bad until much later on, right? You look at a guy like The Rock, right? All he wanted to do was go and play in the NFL. That was his dream. He was almost like bred. That was his story, is I'm going to go play in the NFL. My father was an athlete. This is what I'm meant for. Boom, doesn't make it. Now he's the highest paid actor of all time, or he was at least a year ago, right? So you look at all of these stories of people who thought everything was going south. Not the biggest fan of Dan Bilzerian, but all he wanted to do was be a Navy SEAL, right? What ends up happening is he gets kicked out of Navy SEALs. In the moment, he's like, this is fucking horrible.
Yeah.
What do I do now? Ends up becoming like Playboy famous, whatever,
Yes.
right? The point is, you never know if something is good or bad in the moment. And so whenever I'm struggling with anything whatsoever, small or big, doesn't matter, I tell myself, this could be something actually really good. It's just going to take some time to find out if that's the case,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And in the context of a breakup, in the moment it might seem like the world's ending. This was going to be my person, right? Or maybe a business failing. Oh my God, right? This was supposed to be it. I was almost there and everything was going well, and why is this happening to me? But then you find out years later that that's exactly what needed to happen in order for you to get to what was coming soon after, which is the best thing to ever happen.
Yeah.
That's always helped me through any sort of struggles or like deep pits of desperation that I've been in.
Yes. Yeah, I so much agree. There's this, my therapist happens to also be like one of the world's preeminent yoga masters. She's incredibly wise, incredibly important to me. And one of the things that she's always explained to me in these types of situations is she's like, the rule of nature and what nature is trying to teach us is that nothing stays. Like, everything is changing. Permanence is the ultimate fantasy. Like, it's not like that. And so human beings, they grip onto reality and they try to believe that things are stuck the same way forever. Oh, I'm going to love this person for the rest of my life. Oh, everything's going to go great for me. Or, oh, everything's going to be shit forever. And none of those things are true. Maybe. You know what I mean? Like just what you said, like, probably, maybe, possibly, who knows? Like, it's uncertain, and the navigational strategy of the uncertainty is really the question. It's not so much, have we fixed ourselves on some ultimate reality, some ultimate destination point that has to be that way? It's much more about recognizing the uncertainty of it all and recognizing that anything's possible and then navigating that well.
100%. Well, on that note, what's the future for Joseph look like right now? What's your plan? What do you want to happen? Where are you trying to go? I think that's the perfect way to end it.
Yeah, well, I blew up. The first big blow up I had was for making recipes. The first lunch recipe I made, I launched my first cookbook, the Protagonist cookbook, about a month ago.
Nice.
And it's doing really well.
And congrats, by the way.
Thank you. We've sold over 1,000 copies in a month, which was like mind blowing to me. I never anticipated it to do that well. But we're still, we're cranking out a few more recipes every day and trying to get ready for cookbook number 2 eventually. Right now, I'm in the works at the time of filming. Probably will be out by the time this gets posted. I'm working on a guide to fat loss called Fat Loss Made Easy. It's been my most requested, aside from recipes in general, been my most requested opportunity. I'm also working on workout guides and everything else. And I think the future right now for the short term is I have an amazing team. I have an amazing videographer, editor, assistant, senior experts as well, advisors. Like I have an amazing, beautiful, wonderful community of people. I want to build that out, bring them all to LA and work on creating digital products that help people. Where I go from there is sort of an open question, but I'm really happy with that in the meantime. Like it's a very successful business model. It's very enriching. It helps people. One thing I'll say is like, when I decided not to do law, I'll leave you with this. Everyone was like, oh God, like you could have helped so many people. Lawyers are not helping people. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, like at the firms that I was going to work at where they, pay you really well, like if you do public interest, like good for you, man. Like that's awesome. You're a public defender, like awesome. You're doing great work. But like, law is a pay to win system. Like, how do you think Jeffrey Epstein made it so far down the road? Like, he was guilty as sin from day one. Like, but he was able to stay.
Just like these big Hollywood reporters out here as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. Like there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. And not to say that that's on, the Epstein situation is on par with what big law firms are doing per se, but it's like big law firms, like the culmination of my career at a law firm would be like, I wrote a bunch of great briefs, I brokered some good transactions, I helped a few billion-dollar insurance companies not pay out some claims. Nice, or I get to the end of my life and I'm like, I changed millions of people's lives. I helped people directly live better through their relationship with themselves, with food, with their work and behavior, with other people, and I was a piece of that. How could you come up with a better end statement? How could you come up with something more satisfying than that? So social media is actually, at least in the way that I use it, more beneficial to society than anything I would have done at some big law firm, And so the future is just going to be to build that out, help as many people as I can, and monetize it along the way with helpful information.
Dude, I think that's fucking awesome. I think that's perfectly said, and that's a perspective that I would have actually never thought of myself. So for anyone watching who, wants to go on to be a lawyer or a doctor, I think the takeaway from this is you can have just as much of an impact, if not way more, from these next generation types of professions that are still being invented today, and something will come about a week from now that, even is new to us. So I think that's a great way to talk about doing something that's different and how that can impact society as a positive.
100%.
Thank you for coming on, dude.
Dude, thanks for
coming.
Or
I guess thank you for having me here. This is sweet.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Lucas and I met on social media just from enjoying each other's content, just chatted, and it's the sense of mutual respect that we both have for each other that's brought us together as great friends. And it's special. It's one of the things I love about social media so much is, like I've told you about James and some of my other boys in Austin, is social media brings you a community of people that is aligned to your interests immediately. I don't really have very many friends from law school, and no beef. I wish them all well, but just wasn't the same vibe. But social media brought me my tribe, brought me my people.
100%.
You remember that. So it's special to have you here. It's special to be able to talk about this and help other people.
Thanks, Doug.
And I'm grateful for it.
Oh, yeah. Well, once again, thank you for coming on. Everyone who's watching or listening, I'm going to link all of his stuff as well as all of his products, all of the cookbook, Protagonist program, everything. And then go check him out as well.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. See you in the next one.